And now, my good friend Mike Dixon, Chief Historian with the Cecil County Historical Society, professor, all-around great guy, and snappy dresser. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
I'm hearing we're going to be having you not just today, but maybe again and again.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for inviting me and inviting us.
Myself, I could not get enough history. You're going to give us a slice of something today. What is it?
Well, recently we're always working on interesting projects, and about a year ago we were contacted by a professor from Holland who is working on a book about the Senator Kennedy's funeral train. It's going to be 50 years on June 8th of next year. The senator had been assassinated while campaigning out in California, and there was going to be a funeral train that came all the way down the Pennsylvania tracks from New York to Washington, D.C.
Wow. So RFK died in '68, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That was a few years ago. Did you yourself witness this?
I did. It was I was a teenager, and it was a terribly sad day in the nation. Remember, it's 1968, and there's a lot going on.
Yes.
Martin Luther King's assassination, riots in the cities, and here's this young, idealistic senator that a lot of people were excited about. The railroad tracks throughout the county, Rob, were lined with thousands of people. I think the Whig reported there were 2,000 at the Elkton station.
Yes, and I was going to say, they converged at the Elkton station right across from the bowling alley.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently there was a local guy, I forget his name, but he filmed it, correct?
Right. Well, so this professor who's working the book, the reason we were even in contact with him, about a year or so ago, he started doing his research. Well, it's going to be a photo book. He's a professor from Holland, Rin Tapustra, of photography. And he wants to recreate a photo book because everybody was sitting there with their little brownies, their Instamatics or whatever we had in those days. And so from New York to Washington, he spent months looking for people to have photographs. And the guy you're talking about, he actually got a number of snapshots from Elkton. But one guy, Larry Beers, who's my age, had just received an 8mm home movie camera. And Larry said, I think I have in my storage locker those little 3-minute reels of home movies. Well,
remember them well.
Yeah. And of course, Ren was very excited because it gives him another medium to work for. Well, sure enough, Ren pulled up Larry pulled up the locker, and there they were. And they went back to Holland and were recently digitized. So we're all sort of watching this, and that's a cool thing to see visuals. We can't go back 50 years ago and see what that scene was like. And there Larry did an excellent job of capturing the scene. And so that's going to go. This professor's actually got a Smithsonian fellowship. He's in this country. And his exhibit and his book are going to open at some of the major Washington, D.C., New York, and San Francisco museums.
So his photographs won't just be exclusively RFK's train, but it'll be all kinds of stuff.
Actually, it's going to be just the funeral train.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. That's in depth.
Yeah, can you imagine? And see, of course, it was a major news event, and it was a sad day in a lot of ways because the train was late. There had been a fatal accident outside of New York City, in the Newark, New Jersey area. The train, it was 4 hours late passing Elkton, and the crowds were waiting. But there were newspaper photographers on the scene, and so there's plenty of professional photos. And his whole thesis for his book, he doesn't want the professional photos. He wants your memories. What would Mike Dixon, now he didn't have photographs, or Rob Churnside or someone remember? And what were you thinking? He said what gave him the idea is he looked at these professional photographers from news agencies on the train. And they've got all these people are staring back, and they're taking, they're memorializing the senator in some way, but many of them had cameras. And he says, well, what were they thinking? What were the memories, especially as we get to the point where they're starting to decay and 50 years out?
Sure. Well, I think, as you said, you got to preserve this stuff. And this is only one aspect of your work with history. And I myself find history fascinating. Tell us, our viewers, a little bit about what you're into yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm always into something. So I'm a college professor part-time. I teach part-time at Cecil, but I also teach at Wilmington University. And I teach a history of social justice is my area of expertise, but I'm always into something, researching something. And the fun of this type of thing is it just gives you so many exciting stories and fascinating things to work with. We've helped you in a couple of things when you were writing a couple of songs for,
Yes,
for
yes.
some of your CDs
Very
and
helpful.
stuff.
Very
And there's interesting personalities, there's interesting stories. When you go down the road and you see it coming here tonight, you know, I see an old church and an old cemetery, and it looked like a Civil War soldier there. There's a story there, Rob, to be told. And you know that as well as I
Yes.
do, the way you work.
And our county is filled with stories.
This county, this is a wonderful place to practice this beat because it is full of stories.
Well, Mike, we look forward to having you come back and tell us more stories and give us some more history. Thank you for being with us.
Well,
on
thank you
Cecil
so
Back
much.
TV.
See you next time. Thanks.